everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Maureen MacManus, and I am the founder and creator and all of that, president, CEO of BarMD. We are a full service bar prep company. So we do pretty much everything. We do essays, PTs, MBEs, tutoring, grading, full courses. I have books that are coming out for the UBE that are all being released starting in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and all sorts of stuff. And I actually have something new I'm thinking about doing that I'm going to ask you all about what your thoughts are tonight. So, but thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to do a review of the July 2023 UBE. We are predominantly going to focus on the MEEs versus the MPTs. I will talk about the MPTs a little bit, but the reason I can't go in depth on the PTs is because the NCBE doesn't post the full document of those, and I can't share them without paying a licensing fee. So I would have to pay a significant amount of money for every single person that watches it. So I'm not going deep into those, but I'm going to make sure we will send out an email in the next few days where I do have answers that I have written to the performance tests, and I'm going to share one of them over email. So we're going to send out an email in the next few days where I'm going to attach one of my answers. I have to just double check and make sure that I can do that with the NCBE, that doesn't violate the licensing. So be on the lookout for that. Definitely be on the lookout for that, because I do want you all to get that information and to be able to know. But I will talk about the PTs tonight. Like, I'm absolutely going to talk about them tonight, but I just wanted to give you all a heads up just to set expectations. So we are going to start digging into this. So let me get my PowerPoint up. I never thought I would spend so much of my life doing PowerPoint presentations, but here we are. All right. And the chat is on. If y'all have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I will try to get to them. I will try to, if it's all right, I'm going to try to really hold off our questions for a little bit till we get closer to the end. All right. So today, by the end of today, I want you to understand the issues in the July 2023 essays for the UBE. I want you to have an understanding a bit of the July 2023 MPTs, and I want you to have a plan for the February 24 UBE if you're taking it, which I'm assuming everybody here is taking the exam this coming February, or if you're taking July and you want to talk about it, then we should definitely do that. A few things before we get into all of this. I want to talk about, the essays are actually posted. Yeah, here is a link to the July 2023 essays. You have to pull them from the NCBE site. I'm not allowed to distribute them. You all have to go and retrieve them there. I will share them on my screen in a little bit here, but I'm going to talk about some stuff that we have coming up just while y'all are here. So it's coming on November 13th. It was originally supposed to release on the 10th, but there's a huge admin thing that we have to deal with. So it's going to come instead of Friday, it's going to come on Monday, the 13th. So this is my new MBE book that I've been working incredibly hard on. For any of you guys, is the MBE, can you all tell me in the chat what the issue is, or what you tend to struggle with the most, getting a high score? Is it the essays? Is it the PT? Is it the MBE? Is it all of the above? What is it that you struggle with? For a lot of people, it's the MBE, and the MBE is one of the harder things, I think, to teach. But I have done a ton of tutoring of the MBE, and I know every single MBE question, I know them inside and out. So I've been writing a book, a textbook for the MBE. And so that is coming out very soon. It has all of the black letter law that you need. It has 410 real MBE questions, and they're all broken down into assignments. So it's all of the most recently released MBE questions. There's strategies, tips, charts, all sorts of good stuff in there, tons of tips relevant to each little point. For those of you that are visual and you like tables and it's really tables and things organized that way. I've put a lot of effort into doing that and really getting all of the black letter law that you need, including stuff where you're not going to necessarily see an MBE question testing a particular area of law, but you do need to be aware of it, and particularly within Civ Pro. The other thing that's really big about this book is I created a schedule so that you can incorporate it and use Adaptive R or UWorld with it. So you can take your Adaptive R or UWorld and you can use the schedule in this book to have a full study schedule. So I really wanted to create, the MBE questions are the same in UWorld and Adaptive R. There's not newer questions. But I really wanted to create a resource that made it so that you could take Adaptive RU World and really create a structured program with it, because people need to know, what am I supposed to do every day? So I created that. So that's a big part of it. So this is really designed to be like your law questions, teach you the patterns, show you how to do that, strategies, tactics, tips, all of that stuff, and a bunch of questions, and take the other resources, because most people use Adaptive RU World, or some people use BarMax or whatever it is. And like, I have an MBE program, but I wanted you to take that and have structure. So we are also going to have a hard copy of it. So you can order the digital version, and then you'll be able to, you have to pay for the cost of printing and shipping, but I'm not like charging a premium on that or anything at all. I'm literally charging what it costs. And we're going to ship that, we can ship a hard copy as well. So, but some people like just digital, so you can have that. I'm like a paper person. I like to have hard copies. So that is coming out. We also have twice, but I have my essay book for those of you that struggle with the essays. This is coming out. These are templates. So somebody asked, is it similar to Emmanuel's Strategies and Tactics? Yeah, but there's a lot more. So my book it really takes like kind of, I know the books that are out there. I know all about strategies and tactics. I know there's like MBE Decoded, and I know the author is Mary and Tina. And like, that's a black letter law book where there's like all the black letter law and talks about strategies. Mine is like black letter law plus strategies and tactics plus questions plus structure. Sorry, I almost fell out of my chair. Plus structure. So you can take what you use, right, Adaptive RU World, and like actually have like know what you're supposed to do every day. I created a 75-day study schedule. So basically you start like December 15th and go. Right? Or you can start a little bit earlier. You can add some breaks and stuff too. I also have this essay book, and there's not essays within the essay book. What it is, it's all the black letter law, but it's organized and broken down into templates showing you how to write the analysis. I also have like a really big thing that I'm big on is writing rules simply to make it understandable. It's this fill in the blank analysis. I can show this book to you all too. I can show you what it looks like at the end of the session if y'all want to see it. We also do have a little sample of it that you can download. It's part of the Civ Pro chapter, but these are templates. So like if so that you need to know how to approach any issue that you're given. So this shows you exactly how to do that. That's really the thing that I focus on with BarMD is like, I want you to not just know like what to do. Like, I'm not just going to tell you to write IRAC. I want to show you how to do that. So I don't just want to tell you, okay, do a PT, spend half the time reading, half the time writing. I want to show you how to do that. And on that note, we have the PT book coming out for the UBE also. This should come out, I think, right around, I think it's December 4th, that this book is coming out. So step-by-step instructions, I show you how to do a PT, how to extract the rules, how to write analysis, how to organize. All of these books will have digital, and you will be able to order a hard copy as well. There's writing formulas. There's going to be at least 12 PTs. I'm contemplating making a digital base bank of some additional PTs as well. But there will be 12 complete PTs where you can download and print the PT so that you can do it yourself. And then you will have my marked up file in library, and then also my step-by-step answer showing you at each step, at each stage of doing a PT, what should it look like. So all of these books are coming out in the next month or so, basically. The first one is the MBE one, November 13th. The essay book is November 20th, and the PT book will be December 4th. We also will have, a lot of people like what I call quick sheets. The quick sheets are a memorization tool. Those will be coming out in December too for the UBE. I've created them for California, but I made them specifically for the UBE too. And those are coming out in December. And then we have this class. If you've come to my other workshops, you know about it, but this is a new class that we're doing and it's on special. This class will be $4.99, but we're doing it for $1.99 right now. This is my MBE class. If you haven't signed up already, this is going to be 8 classes, each are 2 hours. I'm going to dig into and really show you how to approach MBE questions. There will be a ton of strategies and tips, a lot of strategies and tips built in. And I'm going to be walking you through MBE questions, showing you how do these tips work? How does this strategy work? So it's a really good deal for that class. Let me give you the link so there's the link for that class. I also want to talk about some free stuff. Well, we also have this is not free, but these are our Mastering Essays, Mastering the PT course. These are starting in December. These come up, these are our full courses where a lot of you have probably seen my free YouTube videos where I dig into essays and I dig into PTs. I go so much deeper in the courses. So I'm someone I don't like to I don't like to skimp. Like I really want to go like full in and really explain everything. So in my courses, I go really, really deep. So I know I go really deep in the YouTube videos too, in my free stuff, but I go a lot deeper in the actual courses. Somebody asked if I recommend combining the classes with the book. They're definitely not like a replacement. Like they are different. A lot of people, you know, can use one or use the other, but I do think that having both is really, really helpful. The books are not available for the UBE for purchase on the website yet. Those will be available as soon as like you can actually get it and get access to it, which is very soon. But these courses are starting in December. We'll send out emails about them. I'm also doing a bunch of SA and PT workshops and an MBE workshop coming up. You can find out about those and you can register for those on the website, on my website, which I'll put the link in the chat right there. There's a bunch of free study resources that are all listed on that website. You can sign up for the waitlist for the books. You can register for our free workshops. You can sign up. We have a bunch of free workshop courses. So we have one for essays. We have one for the PT, for the UBE specifically. So for the MPT and for the MEE, we have one for the MBE. And we have one that's sort of like general bar exam strategy. Like this class, this workshop that I'm doing right now will be uploaded to the general bar exam strategies workshop, which I did post in the link or in the chat earlier, but here it is again, just so you all have it handy. Oh, thanks, Media. Yeah, I also have a podcast you guys can find on Spotify. It's a BarMD podcast. And if you have not, and I'm going to be recording a bunch of new podcasts coming up, I take time off in between bar exam study cycles because I need a break because it gets a little nuts for me when everybody's prepping for the bar. But I do a free score review. So it's one-on-one. It's with me or a member of my team. Right now it's a lot with me, but I do have 2 other members of my team that do these sessions, and we'll go over your essays with you. We'll look at your score sheets. We'll help you come up with a bit of strategy, etc. Talk to you about your bar prep, all of that stuff. These are 20 minutes. Oh, you can do one of these sessions with one of us, not one with each of us, just one total. And if you have not signed up for this yet, you should definitely sign up for it. It's helpful if you have your essays and PTs, but it's not necessary. I can usually tell just based on the numbers, what's going on. So it's with me. I also have 2 other members of my team who are fantastic. There's Kate Bolus, who has over 10 years of experience in bar prep. She is truly like an MBE genius. She's really, really, really good at them. So Kate is fantastic. She also knows the essays. She knows the PTs. Like she is good at all of it. Super smart. I love Kate. She's been with me for a very long time. You do not have to have your essays or your PTs. It depends on your jurisdiction. So it depends on your jurisdiction if you get copies of what you wrote. You don't have to have, like we have copies of the essays and of the score sheets, the analysis sheets. Just as a heads up, somebody asked me earlier in the chat, can you get the analysis sheets? The NCB doesn't post those. I cannot give you those. So yeah, but sign up if you have not done one of these sessions. There's also Dave Cook. Dave Cook has been with me for a long time. He has over 20 years of experience in bar prep. He really knows his essays. He knows his MBEs. He knows the PTs. I think Dave probably knows more essays than anybody that I know. And I am really, really strict on who I will let talk to people on behalf of this is my business. I own it 100%. And I am really uptight about that, which, because I want to make sure that everybody's going to be helpful, that they're going to be positive and help you understand your scores, help you understand what do you need to do to get where you need to go. So that's why there's only 3 of us. There are limited time slots, but you can make one of those appointments and definitely schedule one of those to meet with us if you want to have a chat. I also have a Facebook group. For BarMD where I will post things I'm thinking about doing. I'm going to do some giveaways in there at some point this bar cycle, probably when the books come out, I'll do a little giveaway. So you probably want to join, request to join that Facebook group. I know Facebook tends to be a bit of a dumpster fire, but I promise my Facebook group is not, because I will kick anybody out that does that. So yeah, so join that group. I do a lot of sharing the stuff there. We also have, I started posting almost every day tips on TikTok. So our TikTok is BarMD Law, and on TikTok and Instagram, but we're doing a lot of tips on there. So it's rules written simply along with tips for those rules. So check that out too. All right, let's get into these essays. So let's talk about the essays. Valerie, the TikTok tips are the same as the tips that we're posting the same video, but we haven't started posting them onto Instagram yet. So they're really all on TikTok right now. So because there's a thing with the copyright with music thing that my social media person is figuring out. But yeah, so you want to check it out on TikTok, even though like I don't really do TikTok, but we do for BarMD. All right, so let's talk about how bar graders grade. Talk about how bar graders grade. They spend 2 to 3 minutes on an essay. That's it, right? They do not spend a lot of time on each of your essays. And generally speaking, when a bar grader is a grader, they are grading one essay. So if I'm a bar grader, I only am grading MEE1, or I'm only grading MEE2, or whatever the PT. I am just responsible. And so I know that essay inside and out. I know what facts you should use. I know what issues there are. I know what the rules are. I know where there are ambiguities. I know all of that stuff inside and out. So your job is to make it very easy for the bar grader to give you analysis, or to give you points for analysis. So you need to be well organized. That's a given though. You don't really get points for that. When you're well organized, when you're following IRAC or CRAC, you are making it very easy for the bar grader to give you the points. And so you're making, small paragraphs, you're writing in, small paragraphs, you're using the key facts, you're identifying counter arguments, etc. They don't dig into it twice. You've got to make it very clear for them. So no massive long paragraphs, break things up, discrete issues, and also get to the point, get straight to what they're looking for. Just like jump right into it. The other thing, so one thing, I've been doing a lot of score reviews over the last few weeks with people as results have started to come in. And I think most jurisdictions are out now, other than California, but that's not UBE. But, one of the big things that I have noticed, that I've really noticed with the UBE, and this is the same with California, is that people are not using the facts as much as they need to. Like if you are not happy with your score, if you got, in New York, if you're, getting 40s, you're not using all the facts. You need to use more facts, go deeper on your analysis, or really more like 30s, high 30s, low 40s. Also, people are not identifying ambiguity and not hitting the counter arguments. You need to do that. I know that there is not a ton of time, but you need to figure out how in 30 minutes you identify the issues, write your analysis, and incorporate as many facts as you can and address the relevant counter arguments. That's your job. And and make it easy for them to read so they can give you all the points when they're looking at it for 2 to 3 minutes. And trust me, I know that sounds crazy that they spend 2 or 3 minutes doing it, but I know in 2 minutes when I'm looking at an essay what score it gets too. So because we know the essays so well, it's easy to grade them. So it is very easy to do it. I remember when I first, I was 2 minutes on this essay, I'm spending months prepping it. I was mad. But it is actually when you know the essay as well as the bar graders do, it's actually really easy to grade them very quickly. All right, let's get into these essays. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to read it. I'll give everybody 5 minutes just so that you can read it on your own. It's 2 pages. A lot of these are fairly long. And then I'm going to read it with you and we'll kind of walk through it. All right, so let me give you all 5 minutes. Is that okay? Do you guys want a few minutes to read it on your own? Let me know in the chat really quickly. I always think it's best if you can read it on your own first. All right, so take 5, read essay 1. And I will put the chat or the link again if you need to download. All right, now let's go through this fact pattern. So I always start with the call to question. So what must the wife prove to establish her negligence claim? Will she likely prevail? Explain. 2, what must the husband prove to establish his trespass claim, and will he likely prevail? So this is asking you what's the rule, and then for you to do the analysis for these first 2. And then 3, assuming that the husband prevails, is it likely that the court will permanently enjoin the farmer from using GS within 1 mile of the couple's house? Explain. Let's look at this. So it's really important to keep in mind, I would make a little note here, negligence. I would make a little note here about trespass. And then also a permanent injunction. So here it says GS gas is a commonly used pesticide injected into the soil before farmers plant crops. After 2 weeks, 90% of GS will have risen from the soil into the air and crops can be safely planted. GS is highly toxic and can be fatal to people in a confined area, where even slight exposure can cause serious respiratory problems. With this, some people thought about strict liability for abnormally dangerous activities. And went there. I've seen people do that on this essay. That's why it's really important to just keep in mind, I'm doing negligence here, I'm doing trespass. So it's really important to keep that in mind. It's also why it's important to read the call to question first. You don't just start digging into an issue that you're not supposed to discuss. Some scientists believe that GS likely causes cancer. Several studies have linked GS exposure to cancer in mice, but no study has definitively linked GS exposure to cancer in humans. So there's a potential for cancer, but it's going to be really tough to prove causation. 10 years ago, State A's health department researched GS. It found that GS injected into the soil eventually rises above ground and can then drift to nearby land up to 1 mile from each application point. It also found that before GS rises into the upper atmosphere, it can remain near ground level for several days in concentrations much higher than the department's suggested safe exposure limit. It therefore banned GS use in farming. So it's just GS is really dangerous, right? Because they don't, it can be very dangerous, we know above, and it's a lot higher. It can stay in much higher amounts than the safe exposure limit. So we definitely want to limit that then, limit exposure. 2 years ago, however, the health department lifted the GS ban in a county where most farms produce valuable crops that are very difficult to grow without effective pesticides. After the only other effective pesticide was taken off the market, the department lifted the GS ban because of several factors, including the need for GS in order to grow the county's traditional crops, the lack of viable substitute crops, the lack of other effective pesticides on the market, the estimated cost of crop losses countywide if GS were not allowed, $500 million annually, and the low population density in the county. So there's a lot of benefits to GS here, right? There's a lot of benefits. And so because of that, the county has now lifted the ban. Now, complying with the law doesn't necessarily mean that you are not negligent, though, remember. So that can contribute to a discussion of whether there's been a breach, but it's not going to be determinative necessarily. The department requires all farmers using GS to attend a safety seminar that presents information on various risks of GS use, including the risks described in the department's findings supporting its earlier GS ban, and instruction on prudent GS application. So there's all of this data here. There's all of these facts on GS. The facts are there for you to use. And I have seen a lot of essays so far where people didn't pass that are not incorporating all these facts in. So you want to, one of the things because of that, because I've looked at so many essays like that, and that is a very common reason that people didn't get high enough scores, and you'll see on the PowerPoint, I'm listing a lot of the facts that you would want to use in the various places so that you can then take what I provide, and this will, along with the PowerPoint, be uploaded to our free workshop course on my website, but so that you can look to see, okay, assuming that you do get your answers and you can look at them, but do you use these facts in these places? And I also note a lot of points of ambiguity because there's a lot of them, and where you could have done a counter argument and look to see, did you do a counter argument there? In essays, that you should generally have at least one counter argument per essay. So look to see, did you do that? Okay, so a married couple moved to this county 10 years ago and rented a house on land adjacent to fields that were owned by a local farmer. The couple has rented and lived in the house for the past 10 years. Again, when you look at this, you might think coming to the nuisance, but we're not talking about nuisance here, we're talking about negligence. When the health department lifted the ban on GS in the county, the local farmer attended the department's safety seminar, so he attended it, and then began applying GS to the fields according to the application safety recommendations presented in the seminar. So he's applying it safely, but it's still a dangerous pesticide. The farmer has used GS at the beginning of the last 2 planting seasons. The couple's house is less than a mile from several points where the farmer applied GS. Last year, the wife was diagnosed with cancer, and the husband began experiencing severe respiratory problems during the planting season. The wife believes that GS caused her cancer, but remember above, they said that there's no direct link. And the husband believes that GS caused his respiratory ailment. Although cancer rates in the county are consistent with the state rate, reports of severe respiratory problems in the county have increased by 50% since the department lifted the ban on GS. So there, it looks like there's some more causal evidence for the husband. The rate of respiratory illness in the county during planting season is now well above the respiratory illness in other counties in the state at the same time of year. The wife has sued the farmer to recover damages for her cancer, alleging negligence. The husband has also sued the farmer, alleging trespass. So he's alleging trespass and seeking injunctive relief to stop the farmer's GS use within 1 mile of the couple's house. So here's the issues that you should have talked about. So what must the wife prove to establish her negligence claim? Will she likely prevail? So I'd put the rule for negligence. Just get the, due to breach, causation, damages, just get it in there. The majority of the discussion here is going to center on breach and causation. So, and you would want to talk about both, to argue both, that they did breach and they did not breach, or present both sides. This is your counter argument opportunity. So facts you could use to support the fact that there was a breach. The farmer was trained. The farmer knew of the GS safety issues. He applied GS within a mile of a residence, and he knew that a small amount of GS can cause respiratory distress. So knowing all of that, he still did it, right? So you can argue that there is a breach, but you can also say that he didn't breach for 2 reasons. So no breach. So benefits of GS were significant. The state said the benefits outweighed the risk. Taking all of that information together, the state said that the benefits outweigh the risk here. So argue that he didn't breach. He didn't fail to act as a reasonably prudent farmer. Also discuss compliance with the statutes. How does that contribute? It's not determinative, but the fact that he's in compliance can also support potentially an argument of no breach. But also talk about causation. And here, so you could argue that there is breach, but for the wife's cancer, there's no causation. So cancer is not a signature disease linked to GS, and there's no epidemiological evidence that GS causes cancer in humans. So because the wife cannot prove causation, not going to prevail on her negligence claim. So you can say yes, breach, you could say no breach, and I would ideally, you would do both, but you would come to a conclusion of no for negligence. She will not prevail because she cannot prove causation. Let's look at the next issue. So what must the husband prove to prove his trespass claim? Will he likely prevail? So you would there give the rule for trespass to land. So you have to be in the possession of the land, they rent the house. Intent, knew of the dangers, knew the gas would travel, but there has to be entry of land onto the land of another. This is gas going onto the land. Probably courts, there in here, there's some ambiguity, and you would want to talk about arguments both ways, but ultimately, courts are probably going to say no because this is gas. There's no physical entry really onto the land. You can have trespass for going into someone's airspace, yes, but courts have been really hesitant so far to do that for a gas. All right, and then third issue is assuming the husband prevails, is it likely the court will permanently enjoin the farmer from using GS within a mile of the couple's house? So a permanent injunction, right? So like, will the court grant a permanent injunction? And in looking at whether the court grants a permanent injunction, the court balances the harms, they balance the hardships. And here, the impact of the injunction would disproportionately impact the farmer. And here's the facts that I would use. The pesticide is needed to grow the crops. There aren't any alternatives. And the health department estimates countywide losses of $500 million annually if we cannot use GS. So because of that, there's going to be so much damage to the farmers that the court's probably not going to grant a permanent injunction, especially given that the health department repealed the ban. Are you guys seeing stuff that I'm covering here, seeing facts in here that you're like, oh, I didn't do that, I didn't use this? Did you have counter arguments in these places? Did you talk about both breach and did you get to the causation issue? And I know it's a lot to do, but also like that's why like in the Mastering the MEE course, I go into how do you do that strategically? And you got to just get to the analysis. You have to like really get to it. Questions on that? You can feel free to type them into the chat. All right, everybody ready to move on to the next essay? Yeah, and Aaron, that's tough. Yeah, it's very long. That was a thing that I noticed. Like there were so many long fact patterns on this bar exam. It was so brutal, I thought, just in terms of sheer length. So it's you have to really know how to be efficient with your time. That's something I really get into and talk about in the Mastering the MEE course. So if that's something you struggle with, that course is really helpful for you, would be very helpful for you. Yeah, a lot of people talked about strict liability here, and that's the wrong thing. And yeah, we are going to post this PowerPoint. You can't download it or anything. Yeah, you wouldn't do negligence per se because there's not a violation of any statute here. And if you didn't evaluate breach, you've got to do that. You've got to hit all the issues they're looking for. All right, let's go back to the essay questions. So let me give everybody, I'll give you all 5 minutes to read question 2, this second essay, all right? The business associations. So take 5, read this one, and then I'm going to go through it. All right, let's look at this one. So let's start with the call to question again. So is parent liable to Vanco as a partner of sub? This is just saying, is there a partnership between parent and sub? So does a partnership exist? Because then if there's a partnership, there's liability between partners. So this is just talking about partnership formation. Number 2, is parent bound by the agreement between sub and Vanco signed by parent's manager? This is asking for agency, talking about agency. So is parent, with parent's manager, were they acting on behalf of parent with this agreement? Yes or no? And then 3, should the fact that parent and sub are separate organizations be disregarded? This is talking about piercing the corporate veil. The word disregarded means piercing the corporate veil. So the parent is liable for sub's obligations to Vanco. Explain. All right. So parent LLC and sub LLC are both manager managed LLCs, each with a sole manager. Sorry, give me 1 second. Each with a sole manager. Parent LLC is a sole member of sub LLC and selects sub's manager. That's very typical in a parent-sub relationship. Parent obtains recycled plastic from various sources. Parent then sells some of this plastic to sub at prevailing market prices. The fact that they're selling at market prices demonstrates that these are like 2 different entities. Sub uses the plastic to make upscale shoes, which it then sells. The 2 companies work closely together. Sub sets its shoe production schedule and creates marketing programs based on parents' projections of its access to recycled plastic. The local newspaper once characterized the two companies as partners promoting business sustainably. So they've been characterized as partners, but does that make them partners? No, right? So there's two separate businesses here. Parent acquires recycled plastic, sub manufactures shoes. There's no profit sharing mentioned so far. So we want to look for that. There's separate management here, right? They're both manager managed. All right, but they have been characterized as partners. The two companies' collaboration is also reflected in their management structures and operations. They share personnel for human resources, accounting, and government relations, so they share some personnel. In addition, parents' technical staff regularly works with sub in designing and testing new processes for using recycled plastic. The two companies have no arrangement for sharing the cost of these services. So there's no like cost sharing structure. Last November, Sub entered into a delivery agreement with Vanco, pursuant to which Vanco would deliver shoes made by Sub to Sub's customers. At the request of Sub's manager, who was away from the office, the agreement was signed by Greta, the manager of Parent, who happened to be visiting the Sub offices that day. So this is at the request of Sub's manager, right? So this is Sub is giving them authorization. And yes, this recording will be accessible on the BarMD Strategies free workshop. Oh, thanks, Nye. Greta, who was not employed by Sub, signed the agreement and wrote beneath her signature as agent of Sub. So they're signing it as Sub, not as parent, which is incredibly important because if they had signed it as parent, there could be some liability. But because they signed it as agent of Sub, they were authorized to sign as agent of Sub. It's all Sub. Recently, Sub ran into financial difficulties after a slowdown in the upscale shoe market. Sub is no longer able to pay its creditors and has stopped payments due under the delivery agreement with Vanco. Therefore, Sub, which for a time had been regularly distributing its profits to Parent as a sole member of Sub, has discontinued making distributions to Parent. Right? Is there an alter ego though? Not necessarily. You have to look at like commingle of assets, all of that stuff, like disregard of corporate form, all sorts of stuff, and they're not doing that. Doesn't look like based on what we've seen so far. So therefore, although Sub's operating agreement requires that its manager consult with Parent's management group before discontinuing distributions to Parent, Sub's manager discontinued these payments without consulting with Parent. All right, assume that Sub is liable to Vanco under the delivery agreement and is unable to satisfy claims by Vanco. All right, so a lot going on here, not as long of a fact pattern. So the three questions. One, is Parent liable to Vanco as a partner of Sub? Parent and Sub, so you create a partnership, two or more persons carry on as co-owners for a profit. Not present here. Two separate businesses. Parent acquires recycled plastic, Sub manufactures shoes. There is no profit sharing. There's no profit sharing, but Parent has right to all profits distributed by Sub. Yeah, so the sole member, like the fact there's a sole member definitely threw some people off, but that doesn't make them partners, especially because there is no profit sharing. That's really the key. There's no profit sharing. There's separate management. There's separate management. There is a counter argument you can talk about. It's going to fail, but that's why they put it in there. So the fact they've been referenced as partners doesn't make them so. But that's why that fact is there, is for you to do something with it. Piercing the corporate veil, it goes to the third issue too. Somebody mentioned in the chat. Call 2, is Parent bound by the agreement between Sub and Vanco signed by Parent's manager? And the answer is no. So one thing with the UBE in particular, and in any jurisdiction, but there are often correct answers. And so you do have to come to the right conclusion. So sometimes you will not get a high score because the analysis is incorrect. So if that's the case, you're not going to get the points. So Parent is not bound because Greta signed as an agent of Sub, not as Parent. Nothing suggests any apparent authority created by Parent, right? Remember, for there to be a parent authority, it has to be created by the principal. Nothing did that here. Greta was given actual authority to sign by Sub's GM, and the contract itself was between Sub and Vanco. Parent was not mentioned at all. So for all of those reasons, Parent is not bound. Parent is not contemplated in it. Parent didn't sign it. The only thing that Parent did was they had one of their people sign, but they signed as an agent of Sub. Call 3. So the fact that Parent and Sub are separate organizations be disregarded, so the Parent is liable for Sub's obligations to Vanco. No. Parent is not the alter ego of Sub. Sub is closely held, but there is economic separateness, and there is separate, like there's no commingling of assets. There was a counter argument about them sharing personnel, but it's still all separate. They can share personnel, but they're not sharing of any money. There's not disregard of formalities, etc. So there's not a whole lot with the piercing the corporate veil here. Like I've seen in some other essays where there's a ton to talk about. Here it's not as big, but yeah, there's definitely not a piercing the corporate veil. All right, essay 3, this trust essay. Let me give you all 5 minutes to read this one. Is that enough time? Are you guys having, is it too much time to read? Yeah, so this essay is interesting because I've actually seen kind of a lot of high scores with this essay. When I saw the fact part, they actually give you the rules in it. So yeah, the law was given, which is actually really nice. So this is kind of a brutal essay, but you're really just applying a lot of the law that they gave you, which is great. But I think that threw people off still. So everybody take a few minutes to read this. It definitely goes on to the next page. This is just a brutal, long essay. So I'll give you all 5 and then we'll chat about it. All right, let's talk about this one. And yes, I agree. This man did not like his child. All right, so start with the call to question all the way down here. If the daughter consents to the termination of the trust and the purchase of annuity A wholly for the benefit of Betty, may a court authorize a trustee to terminate the trust and purchase annuity A? Explain. If the daughter does not consent to termination of the trust and the purchase of annuity B for the benefit of Betty and the daughter, may a court authorize the trustee to terminate the trust and purchase annuity B? And if a court does not authorize the termination of the trust, may it, without the daughter's consent, authorize the trustee to pay 100% of the trust income to Betty? Explain. All right, let's read through this long fact pattern. So in 2008, Tom died in state A, survived by his 64-year-old wife, Betty, to whom he had been married for 35 years. He was also survived by his estranged daughter from a previous marriage. Tom had created a valid testamentary trust stating as follows. 1, Betty and I have had a wonderful marriage. She is the love of my life, and my primary purpose in creating this trust is to ensure that there will be sufficient funds to provide for her care and support for the rest of her life. During Betty's lifetime, 80% of trust income shall be paid to her annually, and the balance of income shall be accumulated and added to trust principal to ensure further growth in the principal that will generate more future income for her. 3, upon Betty's death, all trust assets shall be paid to my daughter. Sadly, I have no other relatives, so I have little choice but to bequeath the trust to my daughter rather than have the trust property escheat to the state. You're not a fan of his daughter. But maybe she doesn't like him, and so maybe it's mutual. No beneficiary may alienate or assign her interest in this trust, nor shall such interest be subject to the claims of her creditors. So there's a spendthrift provision there. Until 2019, 80% of trust income was sufficient, as Thomas had anticipated, to provide for Betty's care and support. In 2019, when Betty was 75 years old, she was diagnosed with a health problem that necessitated her move to a nursing home. Initially, her income from the trust and Social Security enabled her to pay for her nursing home care and other support needs. Betty is now 79. Nursing home fees have dramatically increased, a circumstance that Tom had not anticipated. Even with all available resources and government benefits, Betty can no longer afford current and likely future nursing home fees. Betty has asked the trustee to terminate the trust and invest the entire trust principal in an annuity payable to her. A financial advisor has identified 2 annuities. Annuity A would provide payments sufficient for Betty's care and support for the rest of her life. Annuity B would provide payments to Betty that are 3% less than the payments under Annuity A, but still sufficient for her care and support. It would also include a cash payment payable to the testator's daughter at Betty's death. This payment would be substantially less than the amount the daughter would receive under the trust. Betty has asked the trustee that if the trust cannot be terminated, she be paid 100% of trust income so she can at least meet her current nursing home expenses and remain in her current nursing home for the time being. State Aid's trust code includes the following provisions. Section 1, a trust may be terminated upon consent of all the beneficiaries if the court concludes the continuance of the trust is not necessary to achieve any material purpose of the trust. We need to know what the material purpose of the trust is. So it's obviously to care for Betty. Is it also to care for his daughter? Doesn't look like it. And then what about the spendthrift provision? Upon termination of a trust under Section 1, the trustee shall distribute the trust property as agreed by the beneficiaries. Section 3, for purposes of Section 1, a spendthrift provision in the trust is not presumed to constitute a material purpose, so we know that the spendthrift provision is not a material purpose. 4, if not all beneficiaries of a trust consent to a proposed termination of the trust pursuant to Section 1, the court may nonetheless approve the termination if the court is satisfied that if all the beneficiaries had consented, the trust could have been terminated under that section, and the interests of a beneficiary who does not consent can be appropriately protected in accord with the testator's probable intention. So we really still care about the testator's intent there, and we know the testator's intent here. A court may modify the dispositive terms of a trust if, because of circumstances not anticipated by the testator, so there has to be unanticipated circumstances, modification will further the primary purpose of the trust. So Section 5 requires you to do a little bit of deconstruction of the rule. So you have to see that there are two components: unanticipated circumstances and that the modification will further the primary purpose. To the extent practicable, the modification must be made in accord with the testator's probable intention. All right, so for call 1, this is authorizing the trustee to terminate the trust and purchase annuity A. So Section 1, so you need to identify the appropriate provision. So here would be Section 1. A trust may be terminated upon consent of all the beneficiaries if the court concludes the continuance is not necessary to achieve any material purpose of the trust. So you need to know what the material purpose of the trust is, and that's to provide for the lifetime care and support of Betty. The spendthrift provision is not material, and the daughter's interest isn't a material purpose of the trust really either. It's only created to avoid a cheat to the state. The termination would not violate Section 1 of the trust code. So the court could authorize a trustee to terminate the trust and purchase annuity A. So with this essay, it's really determine the appropriate statute that applies and then apply it. Second part, this is if the daughter does not consent, may a court authorize to terminate the trust and purchase annuity B. So here it's Section 4. So if not all beneficiaries consent to the proposed termination, the court may approve termination if the court is satisfied that if all beneficiaries had consented, the trust could have been terminated under that section, and the interest of the beneficiary who does not consent can be appropriately protected in accord with the testator's probable intent. So would the trust material purpose be met if the trustee purchased annuity B? Yeah, it would be sufficient to care for Betty, so it meets that purpose. So yes. And can the daughter's interest be protected if she does not consent? So the daughter's interest, she's going to get significantly less. But remember, the testator only provided for the daughter to avoid SG typo there, and primary purpose is for the care of Betty. So we didn't really care about the daughter so much. So we really care about meeting the testator's intent, and really he wanted to care for his wife. And call 3, if a court does not authorize termination, may it, without the daughter's consent, authorize a trustee to pay 100% of the trust income to Betty. So here, this was Section 5. So it requires those two things. So unanticipated circumstance and modification that accords with the testator's probable intention. So yeah, unanticipated circumstance, B's health disorder, and dramatic cost increase in costs. And T's probable intent is desire to care for Betty. So can they? Yeah, they can. Then the court can authorize a trustee to pay 100% of the trust income to Betty rather than the 80%. So this one, you just gotta, it's a slog to get through. It's a lot to read, but it's really about identifying the appropriate section and just applying it. A little bit of rule deconstruction too for this last part. All right, y'all hanging in there okay? I know it's a lot to go through. Actually, can I ask you all, can we take a tiny, tiny little breather for a second? I have a poll that I wanna do. I have a question. I'm debating. I have written tons and tons and tons of model answers to essays, and one thing I'm debating about doing is making like giving people access to, you wouldn't be able to print them, my answers, because I don't let people do that, but giving access to a bank of essays along with my answers. And the reason I like my answers better than most others is my answers are attainable. So I would do it for like $100 probably. And you would get a bunch of essays and answers. So you guys would be into that? For like, I would only do it for probably like $100. Yeah, for the UBE. I'm not sure, 6, 8, 10, something like that. I'm not 100% sure how many. Okay, yeah. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it together. It'll probably release in December because it takes some admin on the back end to do a lot of that. But I'll do it for UBE and for California, and I'll probably do some PT stuff like that too. So yeah, if it was, $99, yeah, that's probably what I would do. Yeah, I mean, this workshop is specific to UBE. So, all right, cool. Different from the ME ebook. Yeah, it's essays and sample answers. Yeah, because I write model answers that I think are actually attainable. It's not every crazy thing that you could possibly do. I try to keep mine simple and easy to understand. Yeah, this is sort of like that. I know Gil is toying with making that. The ME ebook doesn't have the essays though. The ME ebook is a book of templates, so it's different. Yeah, the templates are I think incredibly helpful. So if you guys don't mind just answering it just so I can see, because it keeps it anonymous and you can say if you wouldn't do that. because it's a lot of effort to put it together. Collude, I'm not talking about. This is separate from the book. And I would include the grader sheets. Yeah. The book is totally separate. It's a different thing. At some point, I will probably do like the books and this, but all right, cool. Thanks everybody for answering. Let's go back. Let's look at essay number 4. Let's look at essay number 4, which is civil procedure. All right, let me give everybody 5 minutes again to read. This is another long one. Corinne, you basically just needed to do the statutes. There was a couple little rule statements you needed to do, but not much. Somebody asked in the chat if I'm releasing an essay template book for the UBE. Yeah, that's coming out in like 3 weeks. And insane. I've gone through every single MEE that's released and written templates for how to analyze any issue. So it's incredibly thorough. It doesn't include like essays and my answers and all of that. It's just all templates, strategy, etc. It's really, I like it a lot. I did it for California. We've had a lot of success with it. People really like it. So, all right, let's chat about this one. So start with the call to question. Oof, long one again. Number 1, did Tech properly raise the statute of limitations defense? 2, assuming that the court reaches the issue of contract breach, how should it resolve the summary judgment motions on that issue? The UBE, they love to do MSJ questions. It like sort of surprises me. And 3, is there any significant action the court should take on its own initiative? So like a sua sponte conduct, unrelated to the merits of the party's summary judgment motions. So it's really asking like a procedural issue. Is there something that they should do? This makes me think of SMJ because I think of like, that's something that I think about, but it's like the big thing a court does sua sponte. So on January 4th, Diner Inc. sued Tech Inc. in federal district court in state A. Diner Inc.'s complaint read in full, excluding captions and signature as follows. So complaint. Diner Inc. Diner seeks damages for breach of contract by Tech Inc. Tech. The contract is governed by the law of state A. This court has jurisdiction based on diversity. Diner is incorporated in state C and Tech is incorporated in state D. So there's diversity there. The amount of controversy exceeds $75,000. Venue is proper in the district of state A because each party maintains its principal place of business in state A and all the material facts in this matter occurred in state A. What's wrong with this? What does this mean? Anybody? What does that mean? There's no diversity. They claim there's diversity here, but there's no diversity. On January 15th, I'm gonna grab my dog. Everybody, sorry, it's just gonna bark. So there's no diversity there. On January 15th, 2018, Diner and Tech entered into an oral contract in state A. Under the terms of the contract, Tech agreed to design software for a voice recognition ordering system for Diner's location. Diner paid $125,000 for the software. On November 30th, 2018, Tech delivered software for a voice recognition ordering system. However, the software did not enable Diner's computers to recognize orders for all the items on a typical Diner menu. It permitted recognition only of combination meal orders identified by numbers such as combo number 2. On December 1st, 2018, Diner notified Tech that the software failed to allow recognition of orders for all menu items and that this failure constituted a breach of contract. Tech refused to correct this breach. As a result of this breach of contract, the software was useless to Diner, and Diner is entitled to return of the contract price plus other damages. Tech's answer, excluding captions and signatures, read in full as follows. Answer. Tech admits the allegations in paragraphs 1 to 5 of the complaint, so they also admit SMJ, but there's no SMJ. Tech denies the allegations in paragraphs 6 to 7 of the complaint. 1 month after filing its answer, so they filed an answer. So statute of limitations has to be raised as a defense in an answer, otherwise it's waived. So they filed an answer. Tech filed a motion asking the court to grant summary judgment for 2 reasons. First, Tech argued that Diner's action was barred by the applicable 4-year statute of limitations governing contract disputes. Second, Tech contended that its contract with Diner required it to produce voice recognition software capable of recognizing only combination meal orders and that it fully performed that obligation. In support of its motion, Tech cited the applicable statute of limitations, which states that actions for breach of contract must be brought within 4 years after the breach occurred. Tech also attached to its motion the affidavit of its president. So for an MSJ, you have to have affidavits. You have to have like admissible evidence. Affidavit of its president who asserted 1, that she and Diner's president had agreed that the voice recognition software would cover only combination meals identified by number, and 2, that in any event, any breach occurred no later than November 30th, 2018, when Tech delivered the software to Diner, which was more than 4 years before suit was filed. Diner opposed Tech's motion for summary judgment and made a cross motion for partial summary judgment on the issue of a contract breach. Diner asserted that the terms of the contract covered all menu items and that Tech's admission of the allegations in paragraph 5 of the complaint established text breach of contract. In support of its cross motion, Diner submitted the deposition testimony of 8 witnesses to the agreement, including 2 tech employees, who testified that they were present when the company presidents met and entered into the contract, and that they heard the 2 presidents agree that the voice recognition system would cover all menu items. So there's a massive disparity in the amount of evidence, but in a motion for summary judgment, the court doesn't determine, the court's not looking at credibility. The court's saying, is there a genuine dispute of material fact? And there is a genuine dispute because both parties have evidence about the same issue that is contradictory, and it's of a material fact because the terms of the contract are what is at issue. Does it cover just combo menus or combo items or all menu items? So that's the issue here. So let's go into the PowerPoint. All right. So did tech properly raise the statute of limitations defense? No, they didn't. This is a really straightforward one. Doesn't come up all that much. People probably forgot this rule. I think this is sort of easy to forget, but statute of limitations defense is forfeited if not raised in the answer. So raising in the MSJ means the defense was forfeited. So it was waived. So they did not properly raise it as a defense. It was waived. Assuming the court reaches the issue of contract breach, how should it resolve the summary judgment motion on that issue? Parties presented evidence revealing a disputed issue of material fact. So there is a disputed issue, which is whether the agreement obligated tech to provide a voice recognition system that covered all menu items or only combination meal menu items. So there is a disputed issue of material fact. But counter argument, talk about the fact that Diner submitted significantly more evidence in total. But even though they did, that doesn't make it so that the court's going to find in favor of Diner. It's still because credibility determination, weighing the evidence, that's for the jury. So the court should deny it. The court should deny the motion for summary judgment on that issue. And notice here, it's just asking about the breach of contract. It's not asking about the statute of limitations defense. And is there any significant action the court should take? It's just raising SMJ. So Diner's complaint asserts there's diversity. Tech admits there's SMJ, but the complaint says in paragraph 3 that each corporation has its principal place of business in state A. So there's no diversity. Any questions? So really, really long fact pattern, but it turns out to be not that complicated, not the most complicated. But I think this fact pattern, people were surprised, and a lot of people that I've spoken with were just sort of surprised to see a complaint. I think a lot of people sort of brushed over the SMJ issue in that third call, didn't necessarily recognize it. So you really had to be paying attention there for that one. All right, y'all ready for SA5? You guys still want to read it, right? This is a secure transaction. This one's not as long. I do like giving you guys, so take 5 minutes, read that. All right. You guys, it's helpful when I read through it, right? Do you guys like that? Can you let me know in the chat just to be sure? Okay, I thought so, but okay. Just wanted to double check because I know it makes it take longer, but I do think it's helpful. All right, so start with the call to question. So does supplier have an enforced? So this is really 1, A, B, and that's funny. They numbered them wrong. A, C, and D. That's really funny. I did not notice that earlier. Does supplier have an enforceable interest in the machine? Does lender have an enforceable interest? And does big bank have an enforceable interest? Same question asked repeatedly. You're going to get different outcomes for some. And if you have the same outcome for some, it's going to be for a different reason. So probably yes, you're going to have a enforceable interest and 1 or 2. You're going to have one where it's not an enforceable interest and why. So on February 1st, company acquired from supplier a machine for use in company's business. The price of the machine was $30,000. Supplier agreed that in exchange for a down payment of $6,000 and a promise to pay the remaining $24,000 in 12 monthly payments of $2,000, supplier would immediately deliver the machine to company, but retain title to it until company paid the remaining $24,000. So for it to have an enforceable security interest, remember, you need 3 things. You need value given, rights in the collateral, and an authenticated agreement, collateral and in possession of third party. So the third party has to be in possession of the collateral. So we're looking for those 3 things. And generally these essays are structured such that there's going to be they're going to talk about one party, then another party, then another party. It's going to be broken up by paragraph. Okay. Supplier would immediately deliver the machine to company, but retain title to it until company paid the remaining $24,000. This arrangement was memorialized in a writing signed by both parties, so they have a writing. The writing clearly describes the machine. Company paid the down payment. Supplier delivered the machine. Supplier did not file a financing statement with respect to the transaction. So that means it's not perfected, right? Which affects priority. So do they have an enforceable interest? Yes. Is it perfected? Probably not here. On March 2nd, company borrowed $1 million from lender. The loan agreement, which was signed by both parties, stated that to secure its obligation to repay the loan, company granted a security interest to lender in all of company's personal property. Also on March 2nd, lender filed a financing statement. So here they file a financing statement reflecting the transaction, listing company as a debtor and lender as the secured party and indicating all of company's personal property as the collateral. Something's wrong with that. You can't just list it. You can't just have a vague statement like that, all of company's personal property. To describe it, to have a perfected security interest for priority, you have to describe it with particularity. And it doesn't even have to be that particular, but more particular than that. So more particular than all of company's personal property as the collateral. The financing statement was filed in the proper filing office. On April 3rd, a company borrowed $750,000 from Big Bank. The loan agreement, which was signed by both parties, stated that to secure its obligation to repay the loan, company granted a security interest to Big Bank in all of company's present and future equipment. On May 4th, Big Bank filed a financing statement reflecting this transaction, listing company as the debtor and Big Bank as a secured party and indicating all of company's present and future equipment. So here they say all of company's present and future equipment. That's a better description. That's okay. As the collateral. The financing statement was filed in the proper filing office. By August 1, as they always do, company had defaulted on its obligations to supplier, lender, and Big Bank. Each of those creditors is claiming an interest in the machine supplied to company by supplier and is asserting that its interest has priority over any interest of either of the other creditors. Yeah, Big Bank. All right, so do supplier, lender, and Big Bank have enforceable interest? So one, do they have enforceable interest? So you have to go through the three things. Supplier, yes. Value is given because they agreed to transfer the machine in exchange for a down payment and promise of future payments. They have rights to the collateral because it acquired the machine pursuant to the terms of the transaction. And there's an authenticated security agreement because there is a signed agreement between company and supplier. So yes, supplier has an enforceable interest in the machine. Lender value is given because there's a loan of $1 million. Lender has rights in the collateral once company acquired the machine. But lender does not have possession, and although there is a security agreement, it does not sufficiently describe the collateral. Oh, maybe I think I said this wrong reading it, sorry. Because it is just a description of all of the debtor's assets. So they do not have possession. So, and there is a security agreement, it does not sufficiently describe the collateral. So lender's a little tough here. Big Bank. There is value because there's a loan of set over $150K. Debtor has rights in the machine, and there is an authenticated security agreement in the loan agreement with an effective description, all of the company's present and future equipment. So here there is an authenticated security agreement. So we do have that here. So because of that, so determine the relative priority, you have to determine whether each interest is perfected. So a security interest is perfected if it's attached and there's been the additional steps for perfection satisfied. So a security interest attaches when it becomes enforceable unless there's some agreement otherwise. So security interest attached for supplier and Big Bank, not for lender, right? Not for lender. Supplier did not file a financing statement though, and they are not in possession. And Big Bank did file a financing statement. So priority is Big Bank, then supplier, and we don't have to worry about lender because they don't have an enforceable interest. So crazy. These fact patterns are so long and you can run through them quickly here. That's really interesting, Nye. Yeah, I mean, you do get points for the analysis. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, these essays are all very similar for secure transactions. All right, y'all ready to look at the last essay? Essay 6, and then we'll briefly talk about the PTs. All right, let me give you all 5 to read. Essay 6, another long one. So take 5, and then we'll talk about it. We'll be done probably 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. All right, let's look at this one. So really asks the same thing for each of these. So how should the trial court rule on each motion to suppress? So each defendant moved to suppress their incriminating statements to the various officers. So A, B, C, and D. So let's look at this. So just after midnight, police in State A received a report of 4 men lurking in the alley behind a pharmacy that had been burglarized 2 weeks earlier. So a bit suspicious there. 5 minutes later, officers 1 and 2 stopped a car operating illegally without headlights 1 block from the pharmacy. So violated law, automobile stop, totally fine, even if there's a pretext. 4 men are in the car, A, B, C, and D. Officer 1 told Adam, the driver of the car, "You were driving illegally without headlights. Step out of the car and hand me your driver's license." Totally okay. They can make you step out of the car. That's fine too. Although Officer 1 did not say so, he suspected that Adam had been involved in the prior burglary and in fact planned to arrest him. Planned to arrest him doesn't mean he's under arrest. So all of these are based on Miranda too. So planned to arrest him. So I'm thinking, okay, custodial interrogation. Did you read them their Miranda rights properly? If there is a custodial interrogation, has there been invocation? So I'm thinking of all those Miranda issues that come up. As Adam got out of the car, Officer 1 saw a bulge in Adam's jacket. So you see a bulge, you can do a search, you can do a pat down, right? Plain field doctrine, Terry stop, Terry search, right? Terry pat down, plain field. He pat searched Adam for weapons and felt nothing suspicious. Wanting to conceal his plan to arrest Adam, he said to him, just hold on here a couple of minutes. You're not free to leave now, but you will be as soon as I finish ticketing you for the headlight violation and verify that your license is valid. So is he in custody? It's a little tricky. By the way, where were you guys coming from when we stopped you? Then there was a question, right? Adam responded, he just says, where are you guys coming from? Is this likely to elicit an incriminating response? You didn't have to say anything. Doesn't have to say anything incriminating. Just asking a general question. I say nothing without a lawyer. Officer 1 said, relax, I'm just making small talk. We'll release you in a few minutes, whether or not you answer questions. I'm just curious where you guys were tonight. Adam replied, we were coming from behind the pharmacy. So, he says, we'll release you in a few minutes, whether or not you answer questions. So are you in custody? Not really. I'm just curious where you guys were tonight, right? So 10 minutes into the traffic stop, based on incriminating evidence that other officers had just found behind the pharmacy, officers 1 and 2 arrested all 4 men on suspicion of burglary and drove them to the police department. So now they're at the police department. Officer 2 took Ben into a room and said, I need to tell you that you have all the rights the Constitution gives you, along with any Miranda rights you might have. Do you understand? Is that a sufficient Miranda? No, it's not. Right? But did they have to give Miranda warnings? Ben replied, yes, but to avoid prison, I'll admit that me and my buddies broke into the pharmacy a few weeks ago. If you agree not to charge me, I promise to testify against the others. There was no question there. There was no interrogation there. All he said was, do you understand? So Ben volunteered that statement, no Miranda violation, because there wasn't an interrogation there. Officer 3 took Carl to a different room. He read this statement aloud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney and to have the attorney with you for questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Officer 3 then gave Carl a copy of the statement and watched Carl silently read it. Carl said that he understood his rights, and through 2 hours of questioning, he sat staring sternly at Officer 3 and said nothing. That's not an invocation of silence. Just sitting there silently is not an invocation of silence. You have to actually invoke it. Finally, Officer 3 said, I'm not assuming you're exercising a right to remain silent. I don't read minds. So again, were you involved in the burglary? So Carl then said, okay, I was there 2 weeks ago, but I was only sort of a lookout. So he does admit to being there. He's read his rights. He does waive it. There's no invocation here. So the question here is, has there been an invocation? No, there has not. Officer 4 sincerely but incorrectly thought that another officer had advised Dylan of his Miranda rights. It doesn't matter if you think another officer Mirandized. You have to be. Just because you made a mistake and thought they were, that doesn't really matter. Officer 4 took Dylan to the county jail, and while there, Officer 4 spoke privately with cellmate, an inmate and police informant. Officer 4 urged cellmate to introduce himself to Dylan, gain his trust, and ask him about the burglary. This is all okay. Under Miranda, you can have a cellmate, a cellmate get information on behalf of the cops. That's okay. 6th Amendment is a violation, so it has to be pre-charges. Officer 4 promised in exchange to give cellmate $50 and to convince the prosecutor to offer him an early release deal. 3 hours later, cellmate informed Officer 4. I did everything you asked, and Dylan bragged that he broke into the pharmacy 2 weeks ago and tried again last night. 2 days later, State A charged all 4 men with burglary, agreed to try them separately. Each moved the trial court to suppress evidence solely on the ground that admission of a statement into the criminal trial would violate his rights under Miranda. All right, now we've got the questions here. All right, custody and interrogation. Right, so we're going to look at A. So for Adam, right? So Adam was not in custody because the officer planned to arrest Adam, but did not actually arrest him and did tell Adam that he would be free to leave in a few minutes. But you can argue both ways here. So here, there is ambiguity. So here, you can argue that A was in custody because it's late at night. Officers were secretly investigating suspicions about the car's occupant's potential involvement in burglary. Officer had searched Adam, taken Adam's driver's license, told Adam, hold on here a couple of minutes, that he was not free to leave. But overall, the court's probably going to say there's not a Miranda violation because in the totality of the circumstances, doesn't look like they're in custody. They did a Terry search. That's not custody. The officer did tell A that he would be free to leave in a few minutes, regardless of him answering the questions too. So probably not a violation here, but argue both sides. There's counter argument here. So Ben's motion, right? Remember, custody and interrogation. The officer informed Ben that he had all the rights the Constitution gives you and any Miranda rights he might have. This is not proper Miranda, so I would start there. But even though it's not a proper Miranda warning, there was not an interrogation because the only question was whether B understood his rights. That's it. and be voluntarily admitted to breaking into the pharmacy, right? That was not in response to police questioning. So B, the court should deny the motion. Deny A, deny B. C's motion. Remember, custody and interrogation. So officer gave C proper Miranda warnings, but C did not invoke his Miranda rights because he sat in silence for 2 hours. That is not sufficient. You have to actually invoke them. C also understood his right to counsel, understood the right to remain silent, understood all of his rights because he heard them, read them, and he still chose to respond. So the big thing here is sitting in silence is not an invocation. It's still a voluntary response. Last one, Dylan's. Miranda doesn't protect suspects from bragging about their criminal activities. So in front of cellmates. The big thing here is recognizing and knowing the distinction between Fifth Amendment Miranda and Sixth Amendment. This is pre-charges. So you can have a cellmate question. You can do that. That's okay. If charges have been brought, this would not have been okay. And that's essay 6. A lot to get through. Like long fact patterns, a lot of long fact patterns. So, which is typical, but I feel like usually there's like 1 or 2. Here, I think there were 3 that were 2 pages. Let's talk about the PTs briefly. So 2 PTs. Number 1 was Dobson v. Brooks real estate. It's a motion in limine, so it's persuasive. And there were really 3 points. They were given to you in the task memo, and there was a format memo also. So that was one thing that I thought was interesting was both PTs here, MPT1 and MPT2, had a format memo, which we don't usually see them with both. We don't even always have one, but both of them had a format memo this year. So there were 3 points. So exclude the testimony of the neighbor. These mirrored, so this was a motion in limine dealing with evidence. The rules here mirrored the federal rules of evidence. So that was nice. Exclude the deposition testimony of the now deceased ER physician and allow introduction of the insurance policy to show control. So this was like, I think, a slip and fall that occurred outside of a building, outside of this Brooks real estate agency. So this PT, I've seen a lot higher scores on this PT than I have for PT2. I do think MPT1 was a little bit easier because they give you the issues in the task memo. That generally makes a PT easier, but they don't always do that. So you need to know, you do need to know how to approach a PT when they don't give you the issues. Yes, we'll send a link out tomorrow. There is a course you can sign up where this will be uploaded. It's free, totally free. So we'll send a link out to that tomorrow, Dawn. So these are the 3 points that you needed to talk about here and go into. And I wish I could go much deeper, but I will. I'm just going to verify with the NCBE. But remember, we're going to send out an email. We're going to send out one tomorrow with details of stuff that we covered today with a link of where to sign up if you want to sign up for a score review. That gets sent out tomorrow. In a few days, maybe next week, because today's Wednesday. Next week, as long as it's okay with the NCBE, I'm going to send out an answer to one of my 2 PTs because I've written answers to both of these already. So I will send out so you can actually see what my answer looks like as well. So be on the lookout for that email because people love that. MPT2, this is an objective one. This is a letter to a client. You had to write an opinion letter. They also said to write simply, don't do a statement of facts. You shouldn't do a statement of fact on the first one either. You were told to omit it based on the format memo. Remember, generally, I do not do a statement of facts unless I am told to write one. That's the only time I ever do it. MPT2, I thought was more difficult because they don't give you the issues. So the issues are contained in the library and there were statutes plus a case and the case had 3 issues in it. So I thought that this PT was a little tougher just to navigate in general and to figure out. And if you borrowed time, yeah, that was going to be a real tough thing for you. If you borrowed time from MPT1 to do MPT, if you borrowed time from MPT2 to do MPT1, then you're going to be in trouble for sure. For a lot of people, not everybody, but generally like that would put you in a tough spot. So the issues here, this was dealing with a pet, implied warranty of merchantability, damages for breach, pet lemon law with the remedies. There was also ambiguities in the contract with this one. So they didn't give you the issues. So you had to really pull those out. Generally, when they don't give you the issues, you're getting them from the library. So and in the MPT course, I do go through all of this type of stuff. How do you do that? How do you figure this stuff out? If you didn't get an email after last week's workshop, check your spam. Check your spam filters, etc. Also shoot us an email. You can email us at hello and we can forward it to you as a reply. So hello@bar-md.com. I'm also letting my team know because I heard from a few people that they didn't get the emails, but we do send them. They just might go to your spam or your junk for some reason. All right, so that's the 2 PTs. Look out for us sending out that email tomorrow. Remember all those free things that we have. There's free workshops coming up. Sign up for those. So yeah, sign up if you have, score review. We have the free workshops. We also have our classes coming up. So check those out. Yeah. And hopefully I'll see you guys soon, and good luck studying. And if you need anything, let me know. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for your time and for being here. Thanks so much. Bye.